Shabbat Shalom, everybody. My name is Noel Joshua Hadley. This is the Unexpected Cosmology. Last week, I had the audacity to claim that it was chilly here on the beach in Florida, salt life problems. And I'm happy to say that it's been nice and warm and beautiful December weather down here on the Gulf Coast, on the panhandle of Florida. So hopefully you're doing good where you're at. All right, where are we? Now, we've been in a line-for-line study through Genesis chapter 1, actually, really the whole Torah. I'm hoping to go through all the way through Deuteronomy, and I'm taking my time. I've said this many weeks before, but if this is your first time tuning in, just want to make clear that I have the intent to go line for line, through the books of Moses, all the way through. And we've been in Genesis chapter 1 for about 2 to 3 months now. Lost track of time. That's okay. And we've been talking about the firmament. This is the fourth week now that I've been talking about the firmament. And usually when I do these studies, I try to make each week kind of a self-contained study. Unfortunately, it's kind of, it's not so much now because there's just so much information on the firmament. If this is your first time, hopefully you're not going to be lost. I'm going to try to keep it as self-contained as possible. And what are we looking at right here? Well, let's just get right into it. We're going to be talking about the seven firmaments of heaven tonight, which we were last week. We'll be talking about the Ascension of Isaiah, but we're also going to be talking about the Sea of Souls, pre-existence, other things like that, mysteries of heaven stuff, good stuff. And we are looking at the Milky Way. Has anybody here seen like a crystalline night? The Milky Way. It's so hard in today's world with, just the smog and the electricity. I remember when I was 16 years old, went to Kenya for the summer. I was on a mission trip. I was there in the Rift Valley camping in a tent. And I was just awed looking up night after night and seeing that beautiful Milky Way up there in the sky. Haven't seen anything like it since. I'm in my 40s, and I still remember being a mid-teenager back in the last century, seeing the Milky Way in all its glory. And an interesting discussion came up this week in my the Unexpected Cosmology community. We have a online community on Discord. If you are not a member, please come by and join. Come to our Friday night meetups. We get together and just have good conversations. I call it Kingdom Verse. Come on by. And the question came up as to really what the Milky Way was. Now, somebody had brought up a comment that Rob Skiba had said probably 10 years ago now at this point, several years ago, in which he suggested that the Milky Way is like a stitching in the firmament where it broke open and it was kind of sealed together at some point, but it's the windows of heaven where the flood waters came down. Interesting suggestion, not here to disqualify that, but it got us talking, and I gave some false information. I fact-checked myself, and I'm like, I actually said something wrong. I made the comment, I said that Plato said that the Milky Way is the transmigration of the souls, and that what you're seeing up there is a large body of souls in a collective sea. And everyone's like, really? Wow, that's really incredible. And I went to look it up, and I was like, oops, apparently there is no record, nothing on record that we have where Plato said that the Milky Way is a transmigration of souls. Now, he probably did. He has works that did not survive. And in fact, the Neoplatonists, those under Plato, were of this opinion. Therefore, it is very likely, it definitely comes from Platonic thought. All right, so just put that out there. I did fact check myself, and I want to talk about the Milky Way. There's some couple shots of it there. It does look like it looks like a big stitching in the firmament, but I'm going to be showing you why I think that there is good reason to suspect that it has something to do with the transmigration of souls. And by that, I'm not talking about reincarnation, just so everybody knows. I'm of the opinion that there are a large number of pre-existent souls possibly up there. Not really sure all that's going on up there, but I'll show you some textual evidence And here's a shot of Australia for all my Australia viewers out there. There it is in Australia. And here's an interesting map from 1878. I guess you pronounce that the Migeon map of the stars and constellations. You can look it up for yourself. This is, of course, in French, and he calls it the La Voie lactée, which means the Milky Way. And it's a picture of the zodiac in the northern and the southern hemisphere map of the stars, and he shows the Milky Way going through it. And I think there's something to the discussion of souls coming into this world from a pre-existent standpoint, and maybe where the sun is in the zodiac. There's a lot to this discussion. I'm not even going to get to it all tonight. But what I want to show is where this idea of the Milky Way being a transmigration of souls comes from. So Pythagoras is he wins the prize for apparently the person that taught. He gets the credit by the Neoplatonists, Pythagoras, not Plato. This is what we read on the Cave of the Nymphs of the Odyssey by a man named, I don't even know how to pronounce that, Porphyry? Don't really know. He likewise elsewhere speaks of the gates of the sun, signifying by these Cancer and Capricorn, where the sun proceeds as far as these signs when he descends from the north to the south, and from thence ascends again to the northern parts. The Capricorn and Cancer are situated about the galaxy, being allotted the extremities of this circle. It's saying that the sun's going around in a circuit. Cancer, indeed, the northern, but Capricorn, the southern extremity of it. Now, I didn't really care to show you that. I read that part, but you can see highlighted here, this is what's important. According to Pythagoras, I often call him Pythagoras. I'm corrected for that. So you saw me there earlier going, I have to translate in my head, Pythagoras. Also, the people of dreams are the souls which are said to be collected in the galaxy. This circle being so called from the milk with which souls are nourished when they fall into generation. Again, this other individual, his name is Macrobius. He too is claiming that he is sourcing his information ultimately back to Pythagoras. And this is what he says. Pythagoras thought that the empire of Pluto began downwards from the Milky Way. Now, keep in mind that there was no planet Pluto back then. Whether Pluto exists or not is a moot point to me. A moot point. I don't know if there is a Pluto or not. That's unimportant. It is interesting, though, that they did name a planet, which has then got demoted from a planet. I can't remember if it's been promoted again to a planet. I guess I need to fact check myself on that. But it is interesting that they say that the planet that is furthest from is Pluto. I mean, what are they saying there? It's kind of interesting. And as we go through this 7 firmaments study, I'm not going to cover too much of it today. I did a little bit last week. It is definitely interesting that these writers of these extra biblical books say that up in the different heavens, there is a prison up there, and that souls who were on this earth, they go up to this prison. So there is a mystery between this idea of Sheol below us and a prison, and actually Hades, the lake of fire above us in the third heaven, which we're not going to be covering this week. It's a mystery. How does that work? How does above and below in this context work? Anyway, so Pythagoras is claiming that the realm of Pluto, even though the Greeks said he was below, this is part of the mystery. They're saying actually he's up there too. The empire of Pluto began downwards from the Milky Way because souls falling from thence appear to have already receded from the gods. Hence, he asserts that the nutriment of milk is first offered to infants. Now, let this sink in. Think about this. I find this fascinating. He's making the connection. Pythagoras here is making the connection between babies getting milk from the breast when they were first born to the fact that they are nourished with milk in the heavens from whence they have come. Hence, he asserts that the nutriment of milk is first offered to infants because their first motion commences from the galaxy when they begin to fall into their terrene bodies. On this account, since those who are about to descend are yet in Cancer and have not left the Milky Way, they rank in order of the gods. When I actually talk about C.S. Lewis's theology, he comes up with some similar things too. I'll be talking about his space trilogy eventually, hopefully next week. And he says the same thing about the order of being descended from the gods and their age and so on and so forth by how far back you go. And something, unfortunately, I will not be covering tonight is making, again, the connection between honey and milk. Remember the land of milk and honey? And how milk and honey both ultimately come from, I think it's described in paradise, the milk above and the honey above. So this actually does come from Plato, from Timaeus. And this is what he says. And for this reason, the fixed stars were created to be divine and eternal animals. What is he saying? He's saying that stars are divine. This agrees with the Bible. Some of you are like, is this a Bible study? What's going on here? Well, no, this is supposed to be a line for line. And in fact, I didn't start out quoting from Genesis 1. That's because I've been doing it every single week. And I'm you can see I'm picking up on page 70 here of this study. We had a lot of scripture before this, and we'll have more tonight. But I want to show you that there was a collective understanding in the ancient world about how cosmology was. The Bible said the stars are divine, and this is what Plato is saying as well. Ever abiding and revolving after the same manner and on the same spot. So they are fixed stars. They do not move. They're not wandering stars. They are fixed in the heavens or the firmament. And the other stars, which reverse their motion and are subject to deviations of this kind, were created in the manner already described. The earth, which is our nurse. That's really interesting, isn't it? Because I've stated many times that the earth is a womb. The earth is our mother in the sense that she is here to. We are in the womb of the firmament, right? We're like in the belly of the firmament. And we are here to grow and mature into our eternal, our eternal destination, right? Good or bad, whatever you choose. The earth, which is our nurse, clinging around the pole, which is extended through the universe. Say what? He framed to be the guardian and artificer of night and day, first and eldest of gods that are in the interior heaven. What is he talking about here? The pole, which is extended through the universe. He's talking about the universe tree, which I covered. Well, you can see this right here. We see this all through ancient artwork, that in the center of this earth, you see under the firmament there is a tree that grows up. Just so everyone is, of course, we see the Ouroboros there. I mean, very esoteric here, what this is talking about. I am of the opinion that this tree still exists. You can't see it with the naked eye, but there is a literal spirit tree that is in the center of the earth at the pole that extends up all the way into the heavens. Is this the tree of life? It might be. This might be the tree of life. Something that is spirit mind, a resurrected body can see. I never noticed this before. Look at that little victory arch right there. That's interesting. And the victory arch, which is a big giant magnet, is leading on a road to that tree. Wow. I have never noticed that. Well, a couple of weeks ago, I showed you a vision that Sean Walking Bear has. Sean Walking Bear is a member of this community, amazing guy, former shaman from the Cree tribe. He's getting ready to publish a book with us. He's going to be coming out maybe in 2-3 months. It'll be ready, something to look forward to, in which he goes through his path to the Torah and where he is now, but showing all of his the shamanistic worldview that he came out with. And we're finding that these spiritual ideas are worldwide in all different cultures. Spiritual reality is, of course, the truth is Yahushua HaMashiach, Yeshua, Jesus Christos for you Greek lovers out there, and his instructions in righteous living, Yahuwah, really his Father's instructions in righteous living. The theme verse of this ministry is Revelation 14:12, and the definition is the set apart. Who are the saints? It is those who keep the Father's commands and the testimony of Messiah, and they endure until the end, the perseverance of the saints. But nevertheless, this is what he describes in one of his past visions. He said he found himself hovering above his tent. He went out there on this multi-day kind of fasting shamanistic trip with, I don't know if they were all Cree members. I think they were probably various tribes. But he, in the middle of the night, he wakes up and he's floating above his tent, and he says, I looked below me and noticed I was tethered from a cord coming out of my navel. And this cord, this is the silver cord, of course, it connects all the way to, the world tree. He says, in a distance toward the east, it's interesting, he saw it in the east too, was a gigantic sparkling tree with a height reaching far above into the night sky. And the tree was glowing with a bright yellow. Its bark was outlined with multiple glowing lines and wandering lights that flowed along the tree in opposite directions. They resembled stars. It was as if the lines of the tree were being used as a highway by these orbs. And then he says, above the treetop was what looked like a cosmic highway. Millions of beings and stars are traveling along the highway surrounded by the heavens. And he asked the question, was this a spirit road? Now, just so you know, this is going to be in his book coming up. I'm reading you a section in advance from it. And this is what I think Sean Walking Bear was saying. He was saying the world tree there, the polar tree, that all souls are connected to. This is the silver cord that everyone is connected to. And of course, as Solomon would say in Proverbs, once the cord is cut, the lamp falls, the person is extinguished, he is dead. And is the cosmic highway that he saw, is it this right up here? Did he see the Milky Way above the world tree? Well, same thing happened here. I don't know if you caught this. When I read this, I think last week, I read about Abraham, and he goes up to the seven heavens. And this comes from the Apocalypse of Abraham. Now, pay attention to what he sees here. And while he was yet speaking, the expanses opened, and there below me were the heavens, and I saw upon the seventh firmament upon which I stood a fire widely extended, and the light which is the treasury of life, and the dew with which God will awaken the dead, and the spirits of the departed righteous, and the spirits of those souls who have yet to be born. Now, according to this is the Apocalypse of Abraham. He sees in the same spot below. He's on the seventh firmament, so he's looking down, and the firmament kind of opens up in a way that he could see through various firmaments all the way down to the earth at the very bottom. Do check out my video last week where I show you not just the moon map, but the Mars map and then the Jupiter map, and showing how vast this massive this realm is. And so if he's on the very top looking down, I mean, it would be like he would have to have supernatural magnifying vision to see all the way down to the earth, because it's so far down there. He would just be the chaos and the void beyond the earth. That's how big this is. But he's seeing the specific spot where he sees the spirits of the departed righteous and the spirits of the souls who have yet to be born together. Now, notice he's saying the spirits of the unrighteous or the lawless. He's not seeing that. But there is a spot up above our heads and down below Abraham where he's seeing all gathered together, this big sea. As I inserted that word in there, a sea, but a large place where the righteous and the spirits of those who have yet to be born are gathered together. The Apocalypse of Abraham. Now, I have quoted from this passage the Odes of Solomon many times before. Apologies for doing it again, but it is applicable in so many different areas. And it is interesting that we see the Ruach HaKodesh, who I have claimed is Hakamaha, that would be wisdom, Sophia in the Greek. That I believe that wisdom, Sophia, is the Holy Spirit. And of course, here in Odes of Solomon, the Holy Spirit is clearly feminine. And it says this: a cup of milk was offered to me. Now, think about the milk here, okay? And I drank it in the sweetness of Yahuwah's kindness. And this is the Ruach HaKodesh. She is speaking. The Son is the cup, and the Father is he who was milked, and the Ruach HaKodesh is she who milked him. Now, in this it says, because his breasts were full, and it was undesirable that his milk should be ineffectually released. Now, this here, I've had people get really offended by this passage to the point that I have been told that like this is like pornographic, I guess, which I don't even like to use a word with that, because it's not at all. This is the Bible. This is just scripture we're reading from. This is for adults and mature audiences. But people read this, and I have to admit, when I first read this, I was thinking of in terms of physical human bodies. But I'm going to show you that this is something you kind of have to think more cosmological here, perhaps. And well, let's just hold that thought. Let's keep reading here. So going back to Hildegard, you know I love her, and the way she envisions the Holy Spirit, the way she envisions wisdom, and she is a medieval mystic. I think that this may be residue from the Millennial Kingdom. Who knows? Maybe she was one of the 144,000. I don't really know. She says this: "Oh, wisdom's energy, whirling you in circle and everything embrace in the single way of life." And throughout her writings, she basically says that the entire cosmos, all of creation, she is in all. She's in everything. She is the vibrance of life itself. Without her, everything would cease to exist. It would die. It would wither. She is the greening in all. So no matter how high you go up in the heavens or here on the earth, she is here everywhere. She is the mother of all creation. Here, I'm reading from First Enoch really quickly. It said wisdom, and this is speaking of the lady, the deity, wisdom, right? Not just a syrupy Hallmark card, but an actual entity. Wisdom found no place where she might dwell. Then a dwelling place was assigned her in the heavens. Wisdom went forth to make her dwelling among the children of men and found no dwelling place. Wisdom returned to her place and took her seat among the angels. I'm just going to throw this out here. I am suggesting, I don't know. I have, to my knowledge, I have no memory of a pre-existent life. Okay, so I know that in this life, in this mortal life, I have never ascended to the heavens. I know that if I did, then he'd like bonk me on the head and I forgot. Right? I'm just speculating here based on what I'm reading and what I'm seeing. I think it is possible that wisdom is throned up among the children that are yet to be born and among the righteous in the Milky Way. Right? That light you see up there, that glorious light, she could be enthroned up in that area of the heavens. I think it's a total possibility. Well, let's keep reading on why I say that. Now, why did I read from First Enoch 42? We saw that she fled the children of men. She went back up and thrown among the angels. Oh, and this comes from Hildegard. And so she lines up with Enoch in so many of her teachings. It's pretty creepy. Oh, children of humanity, why have you corrupted tender love, who gazes far into my depths and flows forth in works abounding? Because she flows within me. From her in turn flow the living waters. She resembles a budding branch, for as a virgin's embraces are most tender because of her integrity, even so love's embraces are more tender than those of any other. And of course, all throughout these writings, we see that the uppercase love here is wisdom, the Holy Spirit. We see that she is, of course, a virgin. She is the true virgin queen of heaven, which later on the Roman Catholic Church, in the cult of the Virgin, speaking of Mary, the mother, they basically usurped wisdom and claimed that Mary was the wisdom of wisdom literature, which is just obviously ridiculous and untrue, and there's no grounding for that at all. Hence she flees from them to what height whence she came, and weeps because her children. So this is a direct, almost a quotation from Enoch. She flees from them to what height when she came, and weeps because her children, whom she suckled at her fertile breast, fall sick and will not be cleansed from the corruption of their flighty minds. Okay, so you guys see what's going on here? Wisdom is literally basically suckling the unborn children from her breast. She is feeding them milk. Okay, the milk is hers. And she longs for her children to come down to the earth to be born. This is what we see her doing on the creation week when she's going over the waters. She's fermenting the waters and she's getting it ready for all of her children to be born on this earth. She's really looking forward to it. And then when you learn that her inheritance, of course, is in Israel alone, you don't want to be a Gentile. You want to be grafted into Israel. That is her inheritance. She does not get the Gentiles. All right. So if you don't want wisdom as your mother, stay Gentile. If you do, choose Israel. Go with Israel every time. Be grafted in. All right. but she's really disappointed here because she goes down to the earth, and these are her children. They came from above, and they are not cleansed from the corruption. They are unclean people living in an unclean realm, and she was their mother. She suckled them from her breast, and they refuse to honor their mother. That's essentially what's happening. So this is the Milky Way from the Copernican perspective. Now, we could all sit here and laugh at this. Maybe there's some Copernicans listening right now. You're like, huh? Like, well, why are they laughing? What? But we could all sit here and laugh at this, and I won't. I actually, I have to say that I'm obviously, like, how are they getting pictures of this, right? It's pretty, that is humorous. Where they're getting photos this far out, apparently, of our galaxy. I think we're like supposed to be, let's see if you can see where my mouse is. I think we're supposed to be like right about there, and that we're only seeing maybe like we're seeing this inner sky, and that's supposed to be the tear. And but what's funny is that the Copernicans will laugh at the idea that we claim we live on a flat realm. But get this, according to NASA, the Copernican universe is flat. It's flat as a pancake. That right there. It's actually, it's like if you've ever, not scrambled an egg, but fried an egg and sunny side up. It's kind of like that. They say it's a little bit of a bulge there in the yolk in the middle, but it's flat, which is kind of funny. But this spiral is really interesting because even if this were true, if I were a Copernican and I'm reading the same text and I refuse to admit that we live in a geocentric enclosed realm, and I say we live in that, this in itself is fascinating because what are they saying here? If the Milky Way is the realm of the righteous dead and the unborn, well, look at this then. According to this is like a swivel of these pre-existent, unborn, and righteous souls. It's fascinating stuff. So let's talk about a movie that came out last year in 2013, The Boy and the Heron. I want to talk about pre-existence in there, how that plays into the Milky Way. And if you've never seen Studio Ghibli, this is one of their absolute best. It's one of their best films they came out with. And I actually really got into a lot of anime in recent years. I'm not talking about Pokemon. No, I've never seen an episode of that. But some of anime can be very, very esoteric. Like most Hollywood films, American films, are not very esoteric. They're kind of just dumbed down, films where they have to tell you what it's about. But within a lot of these anime films, they feel no obligation to tell you what the movie is about. They'll just put out a movie and American audiences are like, what did I just watch? And The Boy and the Heron is like that. It's one of those where I could watch this movie repeatedly over and over again, and I will still be pulling out new stuff. And so in this movie, starting out, you have this heron. I love blue herons. I'm from South Carolina. We have them in my backyard all the time. Here in Florida, big, beautiful birds. And herons are similar to storks and some of these other creatures that the ancients believed that they had a connection to the spiritual realm. The same as here in The Boy and the Heron. It's actually this heron who has he's kind of like the gatekeeper, and he could actually bring this boy into this other realm. This other realm, I'm not going to give too much away about the movie. If you do watch it, I want you to have some surprises in it. This gets Noel Hadley's stamp of approval, okay? The Boy and the Heron, make it a family activity. There are so many things you can discuss in this film as a family. And the boy gets taken to this realm outside of time. That's kind of important. It's a spiritual realm that is kind of like in Hollow Earth. It's kind of below us, but maybe it's not. And it's another realm. So there's the boy there. There's the heron. And when he goes to this realm, this realm has several layers to it, one of which is paradise. And the god of this world, it's actually his uncle. Looking at the Tartarian / Millennial Kingdom research, right there, that octagonal shaped building should remind you of a lot of stuff. It looks like a baptismal / bandstand. We see this all over the world. We see this in Gothic cathedrals. We see this in Islamic bafflement buildings and all that kind of stuff. It's everywhere. But this is up in the paradise, and they actually call it at one point paradise. In the film, there is the boy walking with his uncle, and the uncle is the creator of this world. And the world, of course, has malice in it. And the malice is represented by the parakeet king. The parakeet king right there, which is another bird. He is the ruler of malice, and he's also the accuser. And he can actually go up into paradise, and he can accuse people of the realm to the creator there. So some really interesting things going on. But this is what I want you to focus on, these really cute little bubbly marshmallow puff looking monsters. I mean, they're adorable. And they're called weras or whatever. It doesn't really matter, right? They're puffy little clouds of joy. And these are explained to us in the movie. It's not just digging into it. They are explained to us as they are pre-existent babies. They are souls of people. They live outside of time in a different realm, and they come into the world. And it appears that they can, when they come into the world, they could, because they're outside of time, like they can come into different pockets of time. Like one could be born, like 1,000 years ago, and another 100 years from now, right? Or 5,000 years in the past, whatever. They just come into different pockets of time. And there's the boy. He's actually watching them being born. It's this really adorable scene. But then it turns to terror, because there's these birds that, as these little puffs of just giddy joy and cuteness are going up to be born in the world, these birds come and they start eating them. They start, it's like kind of gruesome. And I'll say this, like mankind, we say like cognitive dissonance a lot. And another term I like to use is compartmentalism. The idea of having different compartments in your head where you have these two different opposing thoughts and you're completely okay with it. Like you just go to one compartment, open it up, and you dig through that, you close, and you go back over to the other, and they never mix together. This scene really expresses that really well, because, and I don't mean to insult anyone out there, but it seems to me like the lies of feminism, that the feminist dream was always about killing babies. Just like women can't, like feminist women just can't kill enough babies. They just want to keep killing babies. That's what it's about. We actually saw that like in the last election cycle, where that was the big issue, where they were just all freaking out because they wanted to kill more babies, and they're just afraid that there might come a time in their lives where they can't kill babies anymore. And you watch this movie, you watch this scene where all these little things are going up, and these spirals. Everyone, I actually saw it in the theater, and you see people gasping in the audience. You hear them. They're like, they're terrified that these mean birds who would come and kill these pre-existent lives. And I'm thinking, like, I mean, I don't want to judge anyone individually, but I'm just 50-50 basis. I'm guessing half the people who watched this film were like, if they were given the opportunity to be one of those birds, they would treat that like a food, all you can eat buffet, just like the birds, just kill as many as you can, right? But it's interesting. It's interesting to think about these pre-existent souls and why, because people ask me the question all the time, like, well, Noel, if there's pre-existent souls, what about the abortions? What about the babies that don't make it? I don't know. It's kind of sad, isn't it? But it's still just as sad if they're not pre-existent and they're killed off. It's sad either way. But when we see them forming here, there's some Milky Way symbology, as well as sperm DNA gathering to form helixes to survive. And that's what I see here. I mean, clearly they're telling us they're forming this DNA coiling double helix, and Milky Way symbology. That's what it looks like right there. So that was really interesting. Let's talk about some Manna connection in all of this. Now, this picture right here, it is unknown. It is German. It is from the Middle Ages, probably the late Middle Ages, and it's showing manna falling on a medieval people. Now, I know, half of you are saying out there, well, they're just, it's the story of Israel in the wilderness. Yes, it very well probably is, or maybe that's just part of the cover. Maybe manna really was falling on people during the Middle Ages. I mean, I think it was, and I put that in my book, Kings and Priests of the 1,000-Year Reign. I have a whole chapter on it and how it appears that the people who lived in these cathedrals and castles were a resurrected sort that did not need to eat food. And I have shown multiple passages that said that when I say that they don't have to eat food, that they weren't farming. They were not building a type of structure which needed farming food. And in fact, I've shown you multiple passages where it said that in the world to come is always a reference to the millennial kingdom, the 1,000-year reign, that they would be eating manna from heaven. So interesting here that we do see this illustration of medieval people and a naked little baby boy back there eating manna. So recall this scene right here where you have these cute little fluffy balls of delight being born in the world in this kind of DNA-like tower. And then look what it says in 3rd Baruch chapter 6. And the angel said to me, his name is called Phoenix. This is talking about a bird. Hope to be talking about him again in a few weeks. And I said, and what does he eat? And Baruch is asking the question to this angel. And the angel said, the manna of heaven and the dew of earth. Well, in the Chronicles of Jeremiah, it says this: the planets are fastened to the second of the heavens, and then the third is the manna. The manna is made for the pious in the hereafter. Also, in Lord of the Jews, LOTJ Volume 1, it should be Legends of the Jews. It says, I do that all the time, every week. Lord of the Jews. It says it's just a copy and a paste from the Chronicles of Jeremiah. The planets are fastened to the second of the heavens. In the third, the manna is made for the pious in the hereafter. And so I think that there's just an interesting connection between the pre-existent souls and the manna. The manna, of course, is white. And, nobody knows what manna is. Many people have speculated, is it kind of like a milky substance? And by the way, that this esoteric connection to the Japanese is, there's so much to be said about rice itself. I almost went down this whole just talk on rice, and I decided not to at the last minute. I ditched it. So let's talk about the Sea of Souls. This is an illustration that AI came up with, which is kind of eerie because it looks just like the Milky Way, the whole Copernican universe right here. And again, that's kind of what I'm going with. My theory that I'm putting forward is that the Milky Way is the Sea of Souls. That should change. That should make this so much more real for those of you who are in agreement with me that we are living inside of a womb. The earth is in the firmament. The firmament is a dome. The firmament is a spirit, a ruach, a living entity. I believe that the ruach is feminine. It could be masculine, but I think it's feminine. And so we're in this womb developing right now for eternity. And we, of course, will choose our destination. And we're looking up, and we are seeing within this womb, we are seeing that the souls above us as they come down. So this comes from Book of Creation 2:2. The love of Allah Hayam penetrated the third veil and became the seat of souls within the soul sea. So the body of man, Allah Hayam, made of water and things of the earth, breathing into him the spirit of life that he might live. But man, when young, lived only to eat and drink and to fornicate, for being conscious only of the earth, he knew only earthly things and earthly ways. Which, that's part of the test and the trial, right? So we all come from above, from the heavens. We have to come down here, live our lives. I have reasons for thinking we did what we did. Cut some deal basically above, and why we came down to this earth. But when you come down to this earth, look around you, right? None of us remember our former existence. We're all here, and people just fornicate. They're caught up in the material illusion of this world, and they can't get past it. And that's part of the test. Can we live our lives in a certain way where we can live according to the laws of heaven, on earth as it is in heaven, basically. Here's another one from the Book of Gleanings, and it says, before time, I was an unconscious spirit potential, united with the supreme all. Ever since time began, I was in the slumbering sea of spirits, waiting to be drawn forth into separate mortal incarnation. And that says it all right there. We all came from the slumbering sea. I do think that the sea is a milky sea, and it might be kind of a, kind of like a, without getting too graphic, kind of a sperm type of sea. That's kind of how I visualize it. Second Baruch, I don't need to go through these. This is all kind of just repeat of the idea of pre-existence, and I've already established that here. So the song of the soul in the sea of souls, which I just read a portion from that, but I want to cover a few of them here. It says, I am the sleeper awakened from slumber. I am the seed of life eternal. I am the everlasting hope of man. I am a shoots of the spirit divine. I am the soul. I have been since the beginning of time, meaning each one of us, every single one of us, if we are, if we come from heaven instead of the earth. And according to the book of Enoch, like, you don't want to come from the earth. I'm not talking about Adam being formed from the dust of the ground. I'm talking Nephilim. The Nephilim were of the earth. They did not come from heaven. This is why they have to wander the earth, and they couldn't go to Sheol. There was no place prepared for them, right? So you want to be a heaven-born, heaven-created individual. Before time, I was an unconscious spirit potential, united with the supreme all. Ever since time began, I was in the slumbering sea of spirit, waiting to be drawn forth into separate mortal incarnation. I just read from that. Now, though the mortal body enwrapping me fall apart and decay, I remain everlasting and immortal. So before some of you out there are claiming this is giving false hope to people, actually it's not, because this is very, very clear that everybody makes their bed and they have to lay in it. In this life, you are making your eternal bed based on how you live your life. And I'll get to that in this passage here. But let me read this highlighted part right here. I am the eternal bride of mortal men, ever awaiting the awakening kiss, the whisper of recognition. That's what I can't wait for, guys. I cannot wait until I want to hear the words, well done, good and faithful servant. When he says that, it's not like, well done for believing in my death, burial, and resurrection and being on Team Jesus, hooray. No, it's like, well done, your works. Well done, good and faithful, not believer, but servant, right? We want to be a servant of the Most High. You want to be a warrior. You want to serve him. You want to, I'll get into it. We have so much to get to tonight in the Ascension of Isaiah, the idea of being a servant, humility, that heaven belongs to the humble. Oh, being of flesh, deny me not. Let me not dwell in forgotten solitude, left alone, unwanted, and unheeded. Just, do a lot of you feel like you're being unrecognized, right? That you feel like you have no meaning or importance, or you don't feel special, or I don't know. I mean, especially in this day and age in the social media world, where you just see people just trying to get attention over and over. They need validation, and it's never ending. This is the validation you want. You want to live a life where when you basically wake up from, death to new life, that you are giving that validation from our Creator, that kind of recognition. The way it describes it, the awakening kiss, the whisper of recognition. Is that not beautiful? That's what we all truly want. In any kind of, that's the true intimacy, I should say, that any of us really desire or should be desiring. Look out beyond the sphere of earthly opposites, out beyond the pettiness of gains and possessions. Grasp and possess me, your own everlasting and responsive soul. Let me just jump down here. Do not neglect me, O my beloved, or tarnish me, for I come to you as an inestimable treasure. I bring beauty and innocence, gaiety and wholesomeness, decency and consideration, a jewel of potential perfection. Do not drag me down with you into the demon-haunted regions of darkness and terror. This is talking about Sheol for the wicked people. Of course, if you'll recall, there's 4 different chambers in Sheol. 1 is for the righteous, 3 are for the wicked. I am yours, closer to you than any loved one of earth. If you spurn me, I go down to a terrible doom in darkness, there to be purged and purified from the corruption of your touch. The best I can then hope for is to be bestowed upon another. I am drawn by the law of spiritual gravitation towards union with the universal soul, and can no more escape return there than the mortal elements of man can escape the return to dust. Jumping down here. I delight in communing with the great sphere with which I am akin. I rejoice in union with the divine spirit from whence I came. Jumping down here. Those who dwell in the darkness of delusion cannot know me, and to them is lost the greatest glory of life. Once awakened to an existence in consciousness, I can never become nothingness. And so that's the hope, right? That we awaken back into our former glory where we were, and everybody else will become nothingness. They will cease to exist. They will shrivel off into the darkness and torment. That comes from the Book of Gleaning 17, the Song of the Soul. That's the condensed version. It would have taken another 10 minutes to read the whole thing. Go read it if you haven't before. All right, let's start talking about the second heaven. Now, because I will be talking about, I will be reading through all seven layers, like the 7-layer burrito, the 7-layer dip. I'll be going through all 7 heavens in the Ascension of Isaiah tonight. I'm going to be skipping this. I'll be coming back to it. What I want to quickly cover is, this comes from 3rd Baruch. This is the second heaven in 3rd Baruch. And I want to be looking, well, I say dogmen here, but they're typically called dogheads. Dogheads, more prisoners of Babel in the second heaven. I covered that last week. Who was it that saw it? It was Enoch, I think it was. And he saw the prisoners of Babel up there. And the angel of Yahweh took me and led me to a second heaven. And he showed me there also a door like the first and said, let us enter through it. And we entered, being borne on wings, a distance of about 60 days' journey. And he showed me there also a plain, and it was full of men whose appearance was like that of dogs, and whose feet were like those of stags. Now, it's not a perfect picture of the dog heads, but it is interesting that they appear to have dog heads, even if their bodies don't look human. And I asked the angel, I pray thee, Adonai, say to me, who are these? And he said, these are they who gave counsel to build the tower, for whom thou seest drove forth multitudes of both men and women to make bricks, among whom a woman making bricks was not allowed to be released in the hour of childbirth, but brought forth while she was making bricks and carried her child in her apron and continued to make bricks. How do you like that one, ladies? And Yahweh appeared to them and confused their speech when they had built the tower to the height of 463 cubits. All right, so last week, let me see if I can just scan up here and I can show you guys. Give me a second to come all the way up here. For those of you who may not have tuned in last week, I covered a few things. Here's the animal men of the lower realm, the linemen of Moab. And I suggested the possibility, a lot of people within Nephilim research will say that they were kind of spliced together in the laboratory, DNA splicing through Nephilim research in the old world. I am of the opinion, I'm not to stomp on that might be completely true. I am of the opinion that they came perhaps from a lower realm. And I showed why. I showed that there are 6 earths below us, and the world right below us, it actually is not Sheol. It's actually a fully inhabitable realm. We can't get to it, and all the caves, according to Hollow Earth theory, really have sealed up anyways by the inhabitants of that world. It makes total sense. But very likely that these men came from there, like a certain amount of creatures maybe came up here and were trapped here in this realm. I include maybe Sasquatch in that. There could be a lot to it. I think I need to keep going up. Here we saw that, according to Jasher, that let's see. Oh yeah, they became some of the people became apes or ape-like and elephants. And I asked the question: are the the divine elephants of India and Eastern Asia, coming from the tradition of there might have really been, after Babel, some elephant men that were worshipped. They're given a bunch of ladies, sat on a nice cush couch, and I don't know, smoking cigars all day. I don't really know what they did, but they were definitely worshipped. And then I showed you a little bit of the Sasquatch or wild man, really research that in the ancient world, there were a lot of wild men walking around. Did they come from Babel? I actually think they pre-existed Babel. But they, again, could have become like them afterwards. Here we see that they're called the primitive workers, the Lulu. They're called the Yoslings. They have a lot of different names in the ancient world. They were very popular during the Middle Ages. And then, of course, I showed Pan here, really Ham, who became Pan, and he became a satyr type of creature as well. Just as Nimrod also became a giant. All right, let's get caught up back to the present here. Hope you guys are enjoying this tonight. It's really hard in these studies because I have so much I want to show you, and it's like I don't want to be like like all over the place. There's just so much. I'm trying to be organized the best that I can. Okay, we're almost back up. Second heaven. Here we are. So let me show you an actual dog head that's appeared in history. This is him here. His name is Saint Christopher. And Saint Christopher was like the title suggests, a saint. Before the 500s, and of course, I am of the opinion that the millennial kingdom was established from about 536, 540, and the whereabouts there, up to the early 1500s, and that you have, a lot of history to work with in between the resurrection of Messiah and going up to the 500 years. And that was just, if somebody's tuning into this channel and you just heard that's a lot to unload. I mean, we're talking like 5 years of research here for me to make that statement. And I suggest you go back and look at it and just investigate in the Tartaria research. Did the millennial kingdom happen? But yeah, so St. Christopher, let's read a little bit about him. There was a persecution of Christians in the time of Emperor Decius, and the holy man Christopher, this is the dog head, was taken and tortured like the others. Christopher was exceedingly wise and had observed that the Lord, or you might be able to put in there that Yahweh, assisted those of the heathen who believed just as much as he assisted Christians. Now, this Christopher was one of the dog heads, a race that had the head of dogs and ate human flesh. He meditated much on God, but at that time he could speak only the language of the dog heads. You guys have probably all heard the stories of like coming out of soldiers going into Iraq and really Afghanistan mainly, where they were actually hearing the dog heads at night. I've heard testimony of this, and the soldiers would hear this yelping at night, and they would go and ask the locals, and they'd be like, oh yeah, those are the dog heads. They still live in the hills around us. And they're a type of, like Sasquatch. I think that their survival has been based on the fact that they're a spiritual entity. And they could come from Babel. Again, though, they could come from the lower realm, and maybe they're just trapped here. I think it's a theory to work with. When he saw how much the Christians suffered, he was indignant and left the city. He began to adore God and prayed. Almighty God, he said, give me the gift of speech, open my mouth, and make plain thy might, that those who persecute thy people may be converted. And all the better reason, I've said this many times, that when I think of these spiritual entities like Sasquatch, I see them kind of as in the middle, like they're not necessarily evil, they're not necessarily righteous. They can make that decision themselves. We can let each one of them make it. We don't need to make it for them, say they're all evil and demons. I don't know that that's the case. And I think it is totally possible that these spiritual creatures, these fairy creatures, if you want to call them that, can choose to be righteous. In this case, this dog head was like, I want to be righteous. So an angel of God came to him and said, God has heard your prayer. The angel raised Christopher from the ground and struck and blew upon his mouth, and the grace of eloquence was given him as he had desired. It's almost like he breathed into him and gave him like a, the same way Yahweh breathes into Adam and gives him the breath of light and the life, and then that breath continues on through each of us. Kind of interesting. Thereupon Christopher arose and went into the city and immediately began to stop the offering of sacrifice. I'm a Christian, he said, and I will not sacrifice to the gods. There came a certain, Basius to him and struck him. You may do so, said Christopher, for I will not strike you in return, but I forgive you, for forgiveness is the new law. Because Basius went to the king and said, Hail, O king, I have news for you. I have seen a man with a dog's head on him and long hair, and eyes glittering like the morning star in his head, and his teeth were like the tusk of a wild boar. It's kind of an interesting description there. We don't see that in the pictures of him. We don't necessarily see teeth like a wild boar. I mean, it looks like a dog's mouth. I struck him, for he was cursing the gods, but he did not strike me, and said it was for the sake of God that he refrained. I am telling you this in order to know what is to be done with him. For it seems that it is by the God of the Christians that he has been sent to help the Christians. Bring him to me, said the king. The bystanders said that a large number of men must be sent for him. So let 200 soldiers go for him, said the king, and bring him hither in chains. And if he resists you, bring his head with you that I may see it. The number 200 is interesting there. If you saw my video on, St. George in the Millennial Kingdom, and a lot of these stories, we see these books, the same thing, where somebody rises up to defend Messiah amongst all this paganism and these tyrannical kings and emperors who were forcing people to sacrifice to these other gods. And in the story of St. George, there were actually 70 other kings that were brought forward to judge St. George, which I said was interesting because at that time, the 70 Elohim were still over the earth. They hadn't been judged yet. And the number 200 is interesting because it reminds us of the Watchers as well. And, the fact that, the United Nations, and there's a lot of other 200 numbers today. So that's kind of interesting. This idea of 200 soldiers, were they 200 Watchers? Don't really know. Passion of St. Christopher. You can see here in 2nd Enoch, it said, They brought before my face the elders and rulers of the stellar orders and showed me 200 angels who rule the stars and their services to the heavens and fly with their wings and come around all those who sail. So I am, again, of the opinion that when the Watchers, that 200 is a very specific number. It appears as though that there are these specific angels, these Watchers, who are over all the other divine beings in the heavens, all the stars we looked at, everything else, all the principalities, all the spirits, there's 200 of them. They're there to manage everything. And these 200 really messed up. Like they came down and they were looking down. When you read the opening chapters of Enoch, it's like they're looking down and they're seeing all the different seasons. They're seeing the course of the stars. They're seeing all the righteousness of Yah. And they decided they wanted to just go against all of that. I mean, what they did was really, really evil. What they did to bring this wickedness down upon the earth and to fulfill the desires of their heart. But it appears, according to this, that they were replaced. It wasn't just that, there's this void now of 200 Watchers. No, there's still 200 Watchers. It's just there's this number that Yah puts up there, and maybe more have transgressed since then, and they've been replaced. But there's always 200 Watchers up there overlooking the earth. So that's why I thought that number right there, the 200 soldiers, was kind of interesting. I think in a lot of these kind of intermediary texts that go after the New Testament, kind of leading up to the Middle Ages, that there's a lot of kind of the way they're written. There's a lot that there's more than meets the eye, if that makes sense to you. You kind of have to read between the lines and some of this stuff to understand what's going on. All right, so this is what it says in 2nd Enoch, when Enoch goes in the second heaven. And those men took me and led me up onto the second heaven and showed me darkness greater than earthly darkness. And there I saw prisoners hanging, watched awaiting the great and boundless judgment. And these angels were dark looking, more than earthly darkness, and incessantly making weeping through all hours. Hold on, I need a little bit more coffee here. Outside my window right now, there's this horrible screeching sound. I hope you guys can't hear it, because it's like nails on the chalkboard right now, and I'm just like, hopefully it's not being picked up in the microphone, or else all of you will be hearing. Yeah, it's still going on this very second, and I'm trying to like gather my thoughts as it's just like these nails are going down on chalkboard right this minute. And I said to the men who were with me, wherefore are these incessantly tortured? And they answered me, these are the apostates of Elohim, who obeyed not Elohim's commands, talking about the Torah, but took counsel with their own will. They made a covenant with Sheol, with death. They did what was right in their own heart, right? They said, they gave all these excuses, like, I don't need to keep the commands because I have the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit, that tells me what I need to keep. And apparently it's not those commands. I'm telling you that any spirit who tells you to not obey the commands is like the Holy Spirit has already put it down in writing, what we're to keep. So these are apostates who claim to be the people of the book, but they took counsel with their own will. They were led. Lack of knowledge leads to destruction, and turned away with their prince, who also is fastened on the fifth heaven. That's a scary thought. I mean, these are people who claimed they're apostates. These were people in a covenant relationship. They claimed they were in a covenant relationship, and their prince is not who they thought he was. Kind of a scary thought. And I felt great pity for them, and they saluted me and said to me, man of Elohim, pray for us to Yahweh. And I answered to them, who am I, a mortal man, that I should pray for angels? Who knows whether I go or what will befall me, or who will pray for me? 2 Enoch chapter 7. All right. There is speaking of the second heaven, I want to talk about a giant angel in the second heaven. Before I show you, well, you've already seen the pictures, but this comes from Legends of the Yahudim, Legends of the Jews, LOTJ, the second one. It says this: in the second heaven, Moshe saw the angel Nuriel standing 300 parasangs high. Now, when you read these texts, a lot of the time, in the post-Newtonian modern scientific world, people are just like, this can't be real. Like, this is the most ridiculous, literature. Why did people ever believe this? And I'm going to show you that there's something to it. Like there are reasons. Time and again, when I read these texts, I'm like, this is just too loony even for me. Like I can't accept this. But if I put it on the shelf, I'm like, I'm going to think about it. I'm going to think about it before I make a judgment. Time and again, I start seeing evidence that, oh my goodness, these ancients actually knew what they were talking about. So he sees this angel Nuriel that is 300 parasangs high, which is enormous, with his retinue of 50 myriads of angels, all fashioned out of water and fire, and all keeping their faces turned toward the Shekinah while they sing a song of praise to Elohim. Now, right here, this is the Cappadocia region of Turkey near Derekiu. And I want to show you that this creature right here. So this is kind of zooming out. And this is a entire mountain region. And again, I'm of the opinion that the earth that we live on, the material realm, is just a series of biological kind of decay of creatures that just die, and then we just keep standing on them. And there's whole mountain ranges of just these creatures, right? And so when you look at this, it looks like there is this, right over here, you can see a head. And then there's the upper torso, and you see a leg coming down, and maybe another here, all the way. Maybe this is a foot over here. And the reason I think this is interesting, because right here we see a huge wound, and it looks like blood gushed out. And again, this could all be just my imagination, right? I'd be like looking at this mountain range, and the same people who say the ancients just looked at the constellations and they just made up these constellations just to tell stories and they're all fictional. You could say the same thing about this. I'm just seeing these shapes and patterns and things that I shouldn't be. But it's like, what in the world is this right here? And this is huge. I mean, look at this farmland right here. This is a huge gaping wound. It looks like the dude was speared. And just blood just flowed out of this corpse after he was judged. So the creature makes up much of the landscape, assuming this is a creature, measuring something like 12,000 meters. But that's just a guess, obviously. And convert meters to feet, and we come up with 39,370 feet, which is something like 7.5 miles tall. And oh man, now I don't have, let's see. Okay. So my point here is that this creature wouldn't have even been as tall as the angel that Moses saw. Moses saw an incredibly huge angel living up in the second heaven. And this one, if it was an actual Elohim, an actual God, an actual angel that was living at one time that then was killed, would still be small compared to him. Relatively larger than most angels, but very small. And of course, that reminds us of Psalm 82, a popular passage for the judgment of the Elohim. And this is where Elohim stands in court. He stands in the assembly of the mighty and he judges among the Elohim. And he's telling them, he's like, when are you guys going to instruct humanity in righteousness? When are you going to judge them accordingly? And he says that you are gods, you are Elohim, and all of you are the children of El Elyon, but ye shall die like men. That's the warning to the 70 Elohim or the 70 Elohim, to all of the angels, as they are giving positions of leadership over mankind, that if they do not execute his Torah, if they do not live according to his righteous living and teach others to do the same, then they will die like men. And so I have suggested, do we see one of these angels who was judged and he died like men? And he's there as a testimony for us to walk upon and live upon and take, satellite imagery from, of course, balloons up in the ether. Yeah. All right. The third heaven in the Ascension of Isaiah. Actually, I'm going to come back to this when we get to the third heaven. Let me just break right into it. The seven heavens in the Ascension of Isaiah. I call it the seven heavens in the Ascension of heaven. That's actually a misprint. It should be the Ascension of Isaiah. Here we go. And the vision which Yeshayahu saw, that would be Isaiah, he told to Hezekiah. He told to Hezekiah and Yosab, his sons, and Micaiah and the rest of the prophets, and said, at this moment, when I prophesied according to the words heard, which ye heard, I saw a glorious angel, not like unto the glory of the angels which I use always to see, but possessing such glory and position that I cannot describe the glory of that angel. And having seized me by my hand, he raised me on high. And I said unto him, who art thou? And what is thy name? And whither art thou raising me on high? For strength was given me to speak with him. And he said unto me, when I have raised thee on high, though the various degrees, or through the various degrees, and made thee see the vision, on account of which I have been sent, then thou wilt understand who I am. But my name thou dost not know, because thou wilt return unto this thy body, but whether I am raising thee on high, thou wilt see, for this purpose have I been sent. And I rejoiced because he spoke courteously to me. And he said to me, hast thou rejoiced because I have spoken courteously to thee? And he said, isn't that kind of creepy that like Isaiah is thinking this thought and then he repeats the thought in the form of a question? And he said, and that will see how a greater also that I am will speak courteously and peaceably with thee. And his father also, who is greater, that will see, for this purpose have I been sent from the seventh heaven in order to explain all these things unto thee. If you don't know where this is going, Isaiah is about to be taken up into all seven heavens. And, I was thinking, because this study on the seven firmaments of heaven, there's so much on it that it's really hard to get organized. And I decided if there was one thing that you came away with the seven firmaments of heaven, it's the Ascension of Isaiah. Instead of just, giving all these like wacky descriptions about what goes on in each of these different worlds, I want to show you the fact that ascending higher and higher takes more and more submission. It takes bowing the knee, and it takes humility. And we ascended to the firmament, I and he, and there I saw Samael and his host. Samael would be Azazel. He would be the prince of power of the air. Some of you will say Samael is not Azazel. No. Well, that could be, but I've shown in past why I believe that is. Samael and Azazel. Azazel is the one who, according to the apocalypse of Abraham, he was the one who tempted Eve and Adam in paradise. And of course, Samael is the same too. He just goes by different names. And of course, on Azazel is attributed all sin. I saw Samael / Azazel and his host, and there was great fighting therein, and the angels of Satan were envying one another. So the context here is Isaiah, he hasn't passed the firmament yet, the stars above us, and he hasn't gone to the water above that. And there in the ethereal realm is the realm of the spirits, the evil spirits. They're all there up there fighting for power. And the interesting thing is that that's as high as they're ever going to go. They have not humbled themselves. They are seeking their own power. They refuse to serve each other or serve anybody for that matter. And because of that, that's as high as they're ever going to go. So that's Satan's whole thing, right? He wants to ascend above the heights, and his pride is never going to take him there. And as above, so on the earth also. And there it is right there. I've showed that is the occult model, as above, so below. And that's what he's saying, that that's their model. So order from chaos. And that is, they are trying to create order for themselves through their chaos. And so that's why their servants down on the earth do the same thing through psychodrama and staged hoaxes and, whatever the psyop, whatever the operation is. For the likeness of that which is in the firmament is here on the earth. There it is right there. And of course, that is not what we want to mimic ourselves after. We want to mimic ourselves after the prayer of our Messiah, and the prayer of Adam as well in the first book of Adam and Eve. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And I said unto the angel who was with me, what is this war and what is this envying? And he said unto me, so has it been since this world was made until now, and this war will continue till he whom thou shalt see will come and destroy him. And afterwards he caused me to ascend to that which is above the firmament, which is the first heaven. And there I saw a throne in the midst, and on his right and on his left were angels. And the angels on the left were not like unto the angels who stood on the right, but those who stood on the right had the greater glory. And they all praised with one voice. And there was a throne in the midst, and those who were out he left gave praise after them. But their voice was not such as the voice of those on the right, nor their praise like the praise of those. And I asked the angel who conducted me, and I said unto him, to whom is this praise sent? And he said unto me, it is sent to the praise of him who sits in the seventh heaven, to him who rests in the holy world, and to his beloved, whence I have been sent to thee, thither is it sent. So he goes to the second heaven next. And let me just give a description of what's happening in case, just so no one's lost. Isaiah, presumably he's in the region right around Jerusalem. He might be in Jerusalem, which is kind of like the navel of the earth. It is the capital of the spiritual world. And he goes up to the you could say the Byzantine noble, the Constantine noble, the Jerusalem of the next world. The heaven directly above us, there is another palace, a huge palace, and a throne. And on this throne is an angel. He is the emperor of that world. He's got to be lavishly dressed. And to his left, he has an angel who is less luminous than him. And to his right, there is an angel more luminous to him. That angel to his right is the representation of the world above him. So everyone in the second heaven will be more glorious to those in the first heaven. That angel in that first heaven has to be content with that. Like he's ruling. I mean, he's more glorious than anyone in that first heaven or anyone below on the earth, but he has to be content being like, yeah, there's angels who are way. I mean, I'm the big fish in the small pond here. If I were to go up to the pond above me, it would be larger, and I would be a nobody up there. And you have to be okay with that. And I'm going to end on that note tonight, showing how that's the only way to ascend through the heavens. It's humility. He who is the least will be the greatest. It's a complete opposite. That is the idea of trying to be the greatest. This dog eat dog attitude is the as above, so below attitude. But everything is reversed in the kingdom of heaven. It's those who are the least will be the greatest, and those who try to be the greatest will be the least. And again, he made me to ascend to the second heaven. Now, the height of that heaven is the same as from the heaven to the earth and to the firmament. So he's saying here that in this building, where we would be on the seventh floor, because there's 6 below us and there are 7 above us. Actually, there's 10 above us. The 8, 9, and 10 would be the penthouse of Yahuwah in Alahayam. That each one of these are equal in story height from those below. So however tall it is to the firmament, and then you have however thick the firmament is, that would be the next and the next and the next and the next. And I saw there, as in the first heaven, angels on the right and on the left, and a throne in the midst, and the praise of the angels in the second heaven. And he who sat on the throne in the second heaven was more glorious than all the rest. And there was great glory in the second heaven, and the praise also was not like the praise of those who were in the first heaven. So it's more incredible praise, more incredible worship than the heaven below. It keeps getting better. But again, though, the emperor, the god of this heaven, the second level, he has to be content going, you know what? There's if I go one, I mean, he's not even in paradise yet, guys. Like Adam and Eve were in the third heaven, paradise, right? Of the 7. He's not even there yet. He is still as glorious as this emperor is of this vast world. He still doesn't compare with what Adam and Eve were. Think about that. And I fell on my face to worship him, but the angel who conducted me did not permit this, but said unto me, worship neither throne nor angel which belongs to the 6 heavens. For this cause I was sent to conduct thee until I tell thee in the 7th heaven. For above all the heavens in their glory has thy throne been placed, and thy garments and thy crown, which thou shalt see. Wow, that's interesting. So he's like, this angel's like, look, you think, I mean, you're just wowed by this guy, right? But you don't get it. Like this, it should be the opposite. This angel is going to be seeing your glory, and he's just going to be like on his face in front of you. And I rejoice with great joy that those who love the Most High and his beloved will afterwards ascend thither by the angel of the Ruach HaKodesh. And he raised me to the 3rd heaven. And in like manner I saw those upon the right and upon the left. And there was a throne there in the midst, but the memorial of this world is there unheard of. By some accounts, this is where New Jerusalem was kept. Some accounts say the 4th heaven. But it seems like all accounts agree that this is where paradise is, where Adam and Eve were in the 3rd heaven. And I said to the angel who was with me, for the glory of my appearance was undergoing transformation as I ascended to each heaven in turn. Nothing of the vanity of that world is here named. And he answered me, he said unto me, nothing is named on account of its weakness, and nothing is hidden there of what is done. And I wish to learn how it is known. And he answered me, saying, when I have raised thee to the 7th heaven, whence I was sent, to that which is above these, and then thou shalt know that there is nothing hidden from the thrones and from those who dwell in the heavens and from the angels, and the praise wherewith they praise and glory of him who sat on the throne was great, and the glory of the angels on the right hand and on the left was beyond that of the heaven which was below them. And again he raised me to the 4th heaven, and the height from the 3rd to the height from the 3rd to the 4th heaven was greater than from the earth to the firmament. And there again, I saw those who were on the, let me read that one more time. So he goes up to the 4th heaven, and the height from the 3rd to the height from the 3rd to the 4th heaven was greater than from the earth to the firmament. Okay, so it appears, maybe I was wrong. It's funny how many times you can read something and then read it differently. When I'm live, it happens to me all the time. I think he's saying here that each heaven gets exponentially larger, which, if that is true, that's actually fascinating, because that ties right in with C.S. Lewis's view of heaven. The onion layer peels that you unroll, and each one, the further up and further in, and everything keeps getting bigger. If that's what he's saying there, that's really interesting. And there again, I saw those who were on the right hand and those who were on the left, and him who sat on the throne was in the midst, and they were praising. And keep in mind, when he's going to each of these heavens, he's not, the world is a much larger place than Jerusalem, right? But it's interesting. He's just going up to the throne room. He's not going to all the other, the national parks and the cities. There's got to be mountain ranges, cities, all sorts of stuff up there, oceans, each one of those. He's just going to each throne room. And there again, I saw those who were on the right hand and those who were on the left, and him who sat on the throne was in the midst, and they were praising. And the same context applies. One on the left is a representative of the world below, and one on the right is a representative of the world above. And the praise, and it's almost, I wonder if that's to kind of humble the king, right? Like the king is on the throne, and he has to have someone on his right hand all the time who's greater than him. The one who's greater than him isn't ruling, but he's there as an ambassador to make sure that the rule of heaven from above is kept. But that would humble me, right? If imagine that, I don't know, someone wins Mr. Universe or Miss Universe or whatever, like Miss America, whatever. There's this beautiful woman, a really handsome guy, but they have to know that the person right next to them, even though they win the award, the person next to them is actually more beautiful looking than them. Kind of interesting thought, huh? I think that would help to keep all of us humble. If it didn't give us the spirit of jealousy, which is another problem. And again, the glory of him who sat on the throne was greater than that of the angels on the right, and their glory was beyond that of those who were below. And he raised me to the fifth heaven. Now, this is all getting to a point, just so hang with me here. And again, I saw those upon the right hand and on the left, and him who sat on the throne possessing greater glory than those of the fourth heaven. And the glory of those on the right hand was greater than those of those on the left from the third to the fourth. And the glory of him who was on the throne was greater than that of the angels on the right hand. And their praise was more glorious than that of the fourth heaven. And I praised him who is not named, and the only begotten who has dwelleth in the heavens, whose name is not known to any flesh, that he's speaking of Yeshua, who has bestowed such glory on the several heavens, and who makes great the glory of the angels, and more excellent the glory of him who sits on the throne. And again, he raised me into the air of the sixth heaven, and I saw such glory as I had not seen in the five heavens. For I saw angels possessing great glory, and the praise there was holy and wonderful. And I said to the angel who conducted me, what is this which I see, my Adonai? And he said, I am not thy Adonai, but thy fellow servant. And again, I asked him, and I said unto him, why are there not angelic fellow servants on the left? And he said, from the sixth heaven there are no longer angels on the left, nor a throne set in the midst, but they are directed by the power of the seventh heaven, where dwelleth he that is not named, and the elect one, whose name has not been made known, and none of the heavens can learn his name. For it is he alone to whose voice all the heavens and thrones give answer. Keep in mind, this is pre-Messiah. So the name salvation, well, they all knew what Yeshua was in Hebrew, but the fact that his name would be salvation, Yeshua, that was not made known to the heavens at this time. For it is he alone to whose voice all the heavens and thrones give answer. I have therefore been empowered and sent to raise thee here, that thou mayest see this glory, and that thou mayest see Adonai of all those heavens and these thrones, undergoing successive transformation until he resembles your form and likeness. So what is happening here? Isaiah's promised that he is going to see the Messiah descending from the highest heaven down to the earth. And as he does so, he's going to humble himself below the angels and become the form of a man. And in doing so, of course, by becoming the form of a man and humbling himself and becoming the least in the kingdom, he paves the way. He shows us how to do it. He becomes the greatest. I indeed say unto thee, Yeshayahu, no man about to return into a body of that world has ascended or seen what thou see or perceived, what thou hast perceived and what thou wilt see. And he answers the question right there of when people want to know, when he says in John that, I'm going to botch the quote, that, no man has ascended to the Father or whatever. That's a quote there. That's what it. Again, no man about to return into a body of that world has ascended or seen what thou see or perceive. For it has been permitted to thee in the lot of Adonai to come hither, and from thence comes the power of the sixth heaven and of the air. And I magnified my Adonai with praise, and that through his lot I should come hither. And he said, hear furthermore, therefore, this also from thy fellow servant, when from the body by the will of Elohim thou hast ascended hither, then thou wilt receive the garment which thou see, and likewise other numbered garments laid up there thou wilt see. And then thou wilt become equal to the angels of the seventh heaven. Isn't that a crazy thought? That, you know, the righteous, that those who persevere to the end, those who keep the Father's commands and the testimony of Yeshua will ascend up to become greater than the angels. But in order to do that, we have to be the least in the kingdom. And he raised me up into the sixth heaven, and there were no, okay, let's see. Let me just skip some of this just for lack of time here. And he took me into the air of the seventh heaven, starting in chapter 9. And moreover, I heard a voice saying, how far will he ascend that dwelleth in the flesh? And I feared and trembled. And when I trembled, behold, I heard from hence another voice being sent forth and saying, it is permitted to the holy Yeshayahu to ascend hither, for here is his garment. And I asked the angel who was with me and said, who is he who forbade me, and who is he who permitted me to ascend? And he said unto me, he who forbade thee is he who is over the praise giving of the sixth heaven. And he who permitted thee, this is thy Adonai Elohim, Adonai Mashiach, who will be called Yahusha or Yeshua in the world, but his name thou canst not hear till thou hast ascended out of thy body. And he raised me up into the seventh heaven, and I saw there a wonderful light, and the angels innumerable. And there I saw the holy Abel and all the righteous. Now, this has been brought to my attention of how can this be possible? Because the harrowing of hell has not happened yet. Yeshua has not gone down to hell. And he has not, or Sheol, hell, whatever. He has not gone to Sheol, and he has not freed the righteous and taken them up to heaven yet. True, that is true. And it doesn't just say Abel; it says all the righteous, all the righteous. Okay, and the person who brought that to my attention, they're like, "Well, what about Abel?" And I'm like, "Well, okay, you're looking at Abel, but what about all the righteous, all of them?" So. I'm of the opinion this is a similar scene to Second Esdras. Now, contextually, when you look at Second Esdras, he goes up to heaven too, and he sees on Mount Sinai, he sees all the righteous up there with Messiah, with Yeshua, all of them. At that time, they hadn't been freed from Sheol either. And in fact, it's in Second Esdras when he makes the prophecy, he says that Sheol will be emptied of the righteous. So how in the world did Ezra go up there and see all the righteous if they hadn't been freed from Sheol yet? Well, clearly this is a vision. Clearly it is outside of time, and he's seeing a future event. And so I think this should excite us, just like in Second Esdras, that I think when it says all the righteous, that's us, assuming we are righteous. You see what I'm saying? I mean, assuming we make the cut, assuming we pass the test, that we are deemed to be righteous because of our good fruits and our obedience and our belief in Messiah, and therefore our obedience to him, that we are in the scene, that Isaiah saw all the righteous there, and that's us. I don't know, here, I need another coffee break because that excites me so much. And there I saw Enoch and all who were with him. There's your Metatron right there, stripped of the garments of the flesh. And I saw them in their garments of the upper world, and they were like angels standing there in great glory. And we're talking angels of the seventh heaven too, not of the second, third, fourth, fifth, or sixth. And they're, let's see, that's interesting. Oh yeah, that's weird. I saw this earlier this week. I'm like, why is the verse repeated? It's kind of interesting. But they sat not on their thrones, nor were there crowns of glory on them. And I asked the angel who was with me, how is it that they have received the garments, but have not the thrones and the crowns? And he said unto me, crowns and thrones of glory they do not receive, till the beloved will descend in the form in which you will see him will descend. I say into the world in the last days, Adonai, who will be called Mashiach. So, again, this is kind of mysterious. It's outside of time. I think he's seeing a vision here. I mean, that's all I can say about that. I think he's seeing a vision here. Nevertheless, they see and know whose will be thrones and whose the crowns when he has descended and been made in your form, and they will think that he is flesh and is a man. I mean, I could cross-reference this with Second Esdras, and he actually sees all the righteous on Mount Zion being given the crowns, and this is after Mashiach comes back. So again, how does that work outside of time? I mean, is it possible? I'm just throwing this out there. And I talked about the boy in the heron, and I don't want to give away the plot details in that because I would rather, you know, if you're going to go see a movie instead of seeing the trashy Hollywood films, why not go see a really awesome kind of esoteric film that you can think about, you know, spiritual concepts? Because he goes outside of time in that too, he sees people in his life, future and past tense, if that makes sense. Is there a possibility too, and this is something else I've suggested, that in the spiritual realm, we will be outside of time in such a way that we will maybe see this scene unfold too? You know, will we see the Mashiach go down and come back up? I don't know. I mean, that's just something to think about. Nevertheless, they see and know whose will be. Okay, I read that. And the Elohim of that world will stretch forth his hand against the sun, and they will crucify him on a tree and will slay him, not knowing who he is. I have seen so many people argue with me on this and be like, what do you mean, Noel, that Satan didn't know who he was? Of course he knew who he was. No, actually he didn't. He did not know who he was. We have so many texts on this. I could take you just to canon and show you the temptation in the wilderness, that when he was tempting him, he was actually feeling him out. He was trying to get information from Messiah. He knew he was somebody special, and he actually decided in his mind that he was a prophet, kind of like John the Baptist or like Isaiah or all these other that he had killed off. He just kept killing off the prophets. He's like, okay, he's a prophet, but he's not Yeshua, Messiah from heaven, right? The pre-existence Messiah from the highest heaven. He's not him. And Satan actually told him to jump, and he didn't jump. And one of the things he brings up in the Gospel of Nicodemus is this very thing. He said he was afraid for his life. And he saw the same thing in the garden when he was like sweating blood and stuff. And he's like, this guy's weak. Like this isn't him. I can kill this guy. He can't be the Messiah. That's one of the things one of the reasons why Satan took him down to hell. He didn't realize he was a Trojan horse and that he was going to go down there and break the jaws of Leviathan and free everybody. Anyways, they will slay him, not knowing who he is, and thus his descent, as you will see, will be hidden even from the heavens, so that it will not be known who he is. And when he hath plundered the angel of death, which I just said, and of course it's documented in other books, he will ascend on the third day, and he will remain in that world 545 days. And then many of the righteous will ascend with him, whose ruachs do not receive their garments till Adonai Mashiach ascend, and they ascend with him. What is that? There are 545 days. Why have I never noticed that before? Is that actually referencing years, actual years? I don't know. Then indeed they will receive their garments and thrones and crowns when he has ascended into the seventh heaven. And I said unto him that which I had asked him in the third heaven, show me how everything which is done in that world is here made known. And while I was speaking with him, behold, one of the angels who stood nigh, more glorious than the glory of that angel who had raised me up from the world, showed me a book, but not as a book of this world. And he opened it, and the book was written, but not as a book of this world. And he gave it to me, and I read it. And lo, the deeds of the children of Yasharel were written therein, and the deeds of those whom I know not, my son Yosab. And I said, in truth, there is nothing hidden in the seventh heaven, which is done in the world. And I saw there many garments laid up, and many thrones and many crowns. And I said to the angel, whose are these garments and thrones and crowns? And he said unto me, these garments many from that world will receive, believing in the words of that one who shall be named as I told thee, and they will observe those things and believe in them, and believe in his cross. For them are these laid up. And I saw a certain one standing, whose glory surpassed that of all, and his glory was great and wonderful. And after I had seen him, all the righteous whom I had seen, and also the angels whom I had seen came to him. And okay, let me just back up here, because some of you, this is where I'm saying that I think that this has to be a vision. Like, this is not, he's seeing something outside of time. And he clearly said in the context of this chapter that the righteous haven't been freed from Sheol yet, that this is what Mashiach will do. So he's clearly stating that the righteous he sees up there have to chronologically still be in Sheol. You see what I'm saying? So just think about that when you're saying, okay, well, he's saying like, okay, they haven't received their crowns, they haven't received their thrones yet. And then there's also there's some that haven't even arrived there yet. And it's just like, I don't know, I think the chronology is a little wacky here, but I think it's all a vision. All right, let me just skip down here just for lack of time, because I am looking at the time. I'm like, I'm not going to make it. I'm trying to find where Mashiach comes down from heaven. Okay. And I heard the voice of the Most High, the Father of my Adonai, saying to my Adonai Mashiach, who will be called Yeshua, go forth and descend through all the heavens, and thou wilt descend to the firmament and that world, to the angel in Sheol thou wilt descend. But to Haguel thou wilt not go. Now, the reason he goes down to the angel Sheol is to free the righteous, whom Isaiah has already seen in heaven. And that will become like unto the likeness of all who are in the five heavens. And that will be careful to become like the form of the angels of the firmament, and the angels also who are in Sheol. And none of the angels of that world shall know that thou art with me of the seven heavens and of their angels. So this is what happens. Unfortunately, for lack of time, I'm just going to kind of skim through this. Messiah goes down. He ascends through each of these heavens. He starts in the seventh heaven. He goes down to the sixth. He goes down to the fifth. He goes all the way down to the first. And as he does so, let me just read this here. And I saw, and when the angels saw him, thereupon those in the sixth heaven praised and lauded him, for he had not been transformed after the shape of the angels there. So the angels in the sixth heaven, they know who Mashiach is when he goes down there. And they praise him, and I also praise him. But then look what starts to happen. And I saw when he descended into the fifth heaven, that in the fifth heaven he made himself like unto the form of the angels there. So he looks like he's definitely doesn't look like the angel on the right of the emperor of that world. He looks probably less glorious than the emperor himself. And they didn't praise him, nor worship him, for his form was like unto theirs. And then he descended into the fourth heaven and made himself like unto the form of the angels there. And when they saw him, they did not praise or laud him, for his form was like unto their form. And this keeps happening. It goes all the way down. And I find this really fascinating, because this is how, guys, top secret the mission was of Mashiach. He didn't even trust the angels in these different worlds. Levels 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. By level 6, like the angels there, he's like, okay, you guys can know this mission, but you got to zip your lips, right? Loose lips sink ships. And this whole mission can be thrown off if word breaks through that Yeshua, the Messiah, has come down to the earth. Nobody can know about this. And this is one of the things that Hasatan, in his lofty pride, he didn't see it. He didn't get it. He didn't get it at all. And so there are angels, like the angels that came down and spoke to the shepherds. And there's others. There's Gabriel. There's Michael. They come down and they announce things. But again, it was still according to this, it was a top secret mission. And it could not fail. And indeed, it didn't. He had to be the Trojan horse. He wanted to go in and free the people of Sheol. And I guess whatever the law is in heaven, it wouldn't have had, I guess, the same effect if he just went down there and freed them. It needed to be his sacrifice, that he dies and he goes down there living the perfect, spotless life, that then, death itself goes in reverse. And you can see there's a lot to read. And unfortunately, in these kind of conversations, man, we would be here all night to go through that. So I'm going to close on these verses tonight. The humility of heaven, commentary on the Ascension of Isaiah. I showed you where Moses went into heaven. And it says in Numbers 12:3, now the man Moses was very humble, more than any man who was on the face of the earth, which is kind of funny that, Moses is writing that. I guess it takes one to know one. We see that in Bereshith 5, that Enoch, he walked with Allahayam, and he did not die, Allahayam having taken him to himself. This is more of that compartmentalism, that cognitive dissonance, where it's like, Christian theology is that all you do is you just point at Jesus and you believe, and you're accounted as righteous, as him. You're righteous, right? You're righteous because he's righteous, right? And it's like, well, okay, then what's different with Enoch? I mean, why Enoch? Why aren't we taken? Why aren't you and I taken? I mean, Enoch's a pretty righteous dude. And this is saying this actually, in my opinion, exposes the lie that you cannot be righteous. Every single one of us can choose to do good and not sin and not transgress the Torah. This was the lie that we all fell for. We could have been righteous like Enoch. We could have chosen to do it. And he lived from, I don't know if he walked from the time he was a toddler with Allahayam. I don't know at what point. I assume he did his whole life, but I don't know. But he walked with Allahayam, and he did not die, and he was taken. That's incredible. That's a truly righteous man. And each of us, we can do that. You can choose to be like Enoch. You do not have to choose to sin or transgress. It can be done. This comes from 1 Peter. The elders which are among you I exhort, who am also an elder, Peter himself being an elder, and a witness of the sufferings of Mashiach, and also a partaker of the glory that shall be revealed. Feed the flock of Allahayam which is among you, taking the oversight thereof, not by constraint, but willingly, not for filthy lucre's sake, but of a ready mind. Neither as being lords over Allahayam's heritage, but being examples to the flock. So again here, like he's saying here, like you're not a true shepherd of the flock. A true leader of the flock is someone who is not forcing things on them, like their authority on them. Like they are feeding them by example. They are lowering themselves below everybody else. And when the chief shepherd shall appear, ye shall receive a crown of the glory that fadeth not away. This is what we saw in Ascension of Isaiah, right? That when he would appear, that he would give everyone a crown. And when the chief shepherd, okay, I read that. Likewise, ye younger, submit yourselves unto the elder. Yea, all of you be subject one to another, just like the angels, from the second to the third to the fourth to fifth heaven, be subject to the one on your right. And be clothed with humility, for Allahayam resisteth the proud and giveth grace to the humble. Who does he resist? The spirits right below the firmament that are order out of chaos. They're just fighting and contemptuous and just malicious and going at it, striving for power. Those are the ones the amazing things, guys, is that there's only two people to mold ourselves after, Azazel or Yeshua. That's kind of a scary thought. It's either you are at any given minute, you are either molding yourselves more like Azazel and his nature, or the nature of Yeshua. Azazel, of course, wanting, proud, and he's restless and he wanders. He can't have a Sabbath rest. Think about that for all the individuals out there who they know in their heart they cannot take a Sabbath rest. They hate the Sabbath. They don't want anything to do it. They're like, I don't have to keep the Sabbath. I get this day after day after day. And I'm like, you have Azazel's heart. You have a wandering, restless heart. You are molding yourself in his image. Don't do that. All right. Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of Allahayam, that he may lift you up, exalt you in due time, casting all your care upon him, for he careth for you. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about seeking whom he may devour, whom resist steadfast in the faith, knowing that the same afflictions are accomplished in your brethren that are in the world. But the Allahayam of all grace, who hath called us unto his eternal glory by Jesus Christus, or Yahushua HaMashiach, after that ye have suffered a while, make you perfect, establish, strengthen, settle you. To him be glory and dominion forever and ever. Amen. That comes from 1 Peter chapter 5. The next passage comes from James chapter 4. And again, I wish we had time to read through all of the Ascension of Isaiah, but I think you got enough of it where you're like, you see how the theme of the seven heavens works perfectly into biblical theology. From whence come wars and fightings among you? Well, as above, so below. Come they not hence even of your lust that war in your members? Ye lust and have not, ye kill and desire to have and cannot obtain. Ye fight in war, yet ye have not because ye ask not. Ye ask and receive not, because ye ask amiss, that ye may consume it upon your lust. Ye adulterers and adulteresses, know ye not that the friendship of the world is enmity with Allahayam? And of course, friendship with the world would be under the power of the prince of this world. Whosoever therefore will be friend of the world is the enemy of Allahayam. Do ye think that the scripture saith in vain, the spirit that dwelleth in us lusteth to envy? But ye giveth more grace. Wherefore he saith, Allahayam resists the proud, but gives grace unto the humble. Submit yourselves therefore to Allahayam, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. You see how like Peter and James, like they tie up perfectly with the Ascension of Isaiah, the same thing. Draw nigh to Allahayam, and he will draw nigh to you. Cleanse your hands, ye sinners, and purify your hearts, ye double-minded. Be afflicted and mourn and weep. Let your laughter be turned to mourning, and your joy to heaviness. Humble yourselves in the sight of Yahweh, and he shall lift you up. Yaakov, or James chapter 4. So it's like the opposite, right? You humble yourselves, you lower yourself in order to be lifted up. It's working in opposites, whereas those who lift themselves up will be ignored by Allahayam, and they will in turn never be raised higher up. 2 Chronicles 7:14 says, if my people which are called by my name shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn wicked, then will I hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and will heal their land. This is Luke 14. And it came to pass, as he, this would be Messiah, Yeshua, went into the house of one of the chief Pharisees to eat bread on the Sabbath day, that they watched him. And behold, there was, to make sure he's, not doing anything too Talmudic. I'm sorry, breaking the Talmud, doing anything too anti-Talmudic. I said that wrong. Man, I messed that up. They wanted him to be Talmudic. And if he wasn't Talmudic enough, they're watching him to make sure. And behold, there was a certain man before him which had the dropsy. And Yahusha answering spake unto the lawyers and Pharisees, saying, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath day? And they held their shalom. And he took it, and he took him and healed him and let him go. And answered them, saying, which of you shall have an ass or an ox fall into a pit, and will not straightway pull him out on the Sabbath day? And they could not answer him again to these things. And he put forth a parable to those which were bidden, when he marked how they chose out the chief room, saying unto them, when thou art bidden of any man to a wedding, sit not down in the highest room. Think about this again in the Ascension of Isaiah. So think about the 7 layers, and where do you go and, position yourself? Like right now, if you could choose, where are you going to go? All right. So he's saying, don't go to the highest heaven. Don't do it. Just don't go to sit down in the highest room, lest a more honorable man than thou be bidden of him. So again, think about the different emperors, the angels, the ruling angels in each of these realms. There's always a more powerful man to his right to remind him, of his low estate. And he that bade thee and him come and say to thee, give this man place, and thou begin with shame to take the lowest room. But when thou art bidden, go and sit down in the lowest room. This is Mashiach's instructions. That when he hath bade thee cometh, he may say unto thee, friend, go up higher, Then shalt thou have worship in the presence of them that sit at meat with thee. For whosoever exalteth himself shall be abased. He'll be humbled. And he that humbleth himself shall be exalted. Luke 14. This is, again, I want to do like a whole video just on the blasphemy of the Spirit. As soon as I say this, someone's going to write in the comment section about what they think the blasphemy of the Spirit is. That's fine. But I have looked at enough scripture to feel pretty confident in the idea that the blasphemy of the Spirit is being in contempt of court. You do not want to be in contempt of court with the Holy Spirit, with Yahweh, with the Father. You know, you go before a judge and you see this where people just, they're too good for the judge and they're righteous and they're so right. And they just point this out to the judge, and the judge is like, yeah, you're going to get a harsher sentence because like you didn't humble yourself. You have the spirit of Azazel. You didn't humble yourself. And that, for me, that's a blasphemy of the Spirit, to be in contempt. And you see that here. Let me just read it again. For whoever exalteth himself shall be abased. That is someone who is a contempt of court, perhaps committing the blasphemy of the Spirit. And this could play out like in ministries here on the earth. You go into it could be a YouTube channel, whatever. You go to some other ministry and you're too good for them, and you speak down to them, and you're rude to them, and you're disrespectful to the leadership there. I mean, I don't ever want to do that. There are other ministries out there where like, yeah, I don't really want to be associated with that, but I'm not going to go over there. I still recognize the fact that they have wisdom from Yah. They were given wisdom, they were given knowledge, they were given a seat of authority, and I don't want to go over there and disrespect them or attempt to dethrone them in any way, shape, or form. Micah 6:8 says, let me just read this whole thing. Hear ye now what Yahweh says. Arise, contend thou before the mountains, and let the hills hear thy voice. Hear ye, O mountains, Yahweh's controversy, and ye strong foundations of the earth, for Yahweh hath a controversy with his people, and he will plead with Yasharel. O my people, what have I done unto thee? And wherein have I wearied thee? Testify against me. For I brought thee up out of the land of Egypt, and redeemed thee out of the house of servants, and I sent before Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam. O my people, remember now what Balak king of Moab consulted, and what Balaam the son of Beor answered him from Shittim until Gilgal. This comes from the book of Numbers. That ye may know the righteousness of Yahweh. Wherewith shall I come before Yahweh and bow myself before the high Allahayam? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves of a year old? Will Yahweh be pleased with thousands of rams, or with 10,000s of rivers of oil? Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruits of my body for the sin of my soul? He hath shown me, O man, what is good, and what doth Yahweh require of thee, but to do the following, but to do justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with thy Allahayam, which is, of course, what Enoch did. This was a great song back in the Jesus movement of the 70s. If any of you remember this, we see this time and again with the prophets, where he's like, look, this whole system in place for sacrificing for your sins. By the way, most of the sacrifices were for Thanksgiving offerings, but I don't think that's really what was happening. People were like, I'm just going to sin, and I'm just going to, instead of repenting of it, like it's a false repentance. They just bring these sacrifices, and Yah's like, I'm sick of this. This is like Isaiah chapter 1. I'm sick of your sacrifices. Can you just, like, the Torah is intended to be a transformative book that makes you do this, that you walk justly, that you love mercy, and to walk humbly with thy Allahayim. That's what it's about, right? That is the gateway to heaven right there. Humility, walking humbly with our Allahayim, and then he will raise us up. Matthew 23. Then spake Yeshua to the multitude and to his Talmudim, saying the scribes and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. What is Moses' seat? Moses' seat is every Sabbath, the individual who would go and read from the Torah would sit in this seat. That's Moses' seat. So the scribes would go to the Pharisees, probably other people too, but he's saying contextually the bad guys, the Pharisees who he opposes. So is he about to diss Moses' seat? No, he's not. He says, all therefore whatsoever they bid you observe, that observe and do. So what he's saying is that when anybody, it could be anybody, if they are going to sit in Moses' seat and they're opening their mouths just to read the text, the fine print, whatever they read from the Torah, observe and do. Okay, so if a Pharisee comes and tells you to keep the Torah, keep the Torah. This is what the church, what Christianity gets wrong. He was not anti-Torah. The problem was that the Pharisees were anti-Torah. They did away with the Torah to create their Talmud, just like Christianity has their Christian Talmud. They have their own, laws and regulations that they tell you not to keep the Torah. So he could say the same thing about Christians. Messiah could say, whenever a Gentile, someone who doesn't want to be grafted into Israel, and they sit in Moses' seat, and if they should open it up and they should read the Torah, whatsoever they bid you observe, that observe and do. But here's the follow-up. But do not ye after their works, for they say, and they do not. Meaning they're reading from the Torah, and they don't do what it says to do. And they're not transformed by it either. It's a transformative document, guys. They don't do justly. They don't love mercy, and they don't walk humbly with their Allahayam. They will never enter the kingdom. For they bind heavy burdens and grievous to be borne and lay them on men's shoulders. I mean, just like, okay, there's 613 laws in the Torah, right? And all of those are hung upon the 10 commandments. Just on the fourth commandment alone, in the Talmud, there are, I think, thousands of additional laws that they have placed on this, a heavy burden they put on men's shoulders. I mean, like things like, there have been rabbinical Jews through the years who have attempted not to poop or pee on a Sabbath. As insane as that sounds, they have attempted it. Obviously, that didn't work out. And they've tried things like, well, you can't tear up toilet paper. You can use toilet paper if you have to poop, but you have to take each ply and rip it on the day before, because that's work, right? And this is just the ridiculousness. The Christianity doesn't get this. This is what he's talking about here. He's not saying the Torah is a burden. He's saying these guys are making it a burden. And if the Torah is a burden, then you're doing it wrong. It is his yoke is easy, his burden is light. The Sabbath is to be enjoyed. Anyways, Messiah goes on to say this: neither be ye called masters, for one is your master, even Mashiach. But he that is greater among you shall be your servant. And whoever shall exalt himself shall be abased. And he that shall humble himself shall be exalted. Of course, Mashiach showed the way when he lowered himself even to his disciples, and he washed their feet, right? He was their servant. And then, of course, Peter protests, and he's like, no, you don't get it, Peter. Like, you want to enter the kingdom, you need to be the servant of all. I'm showing you the way. I'm showing you how to do it. Proverbs 3 says this: surely he scorneth the scorners, but he giveth grace unto the lowly. Proverbs 11:2. When pride cometh, then cometh shame, but with the lowly is wisdom. I think of this like the people that often, it's kind of like the people in the back of the bus. Yah often, he hands over the keys to the kingdom. He goes through this kind of order of going to the greatest to the least, and the greater just reject him time and time again. And he's like, I'm trying to give you a ministry. I'm trying to give you like this. It was like that with the flat earth, right? Where you see all these establishments, and just in their pride, they couldn't accept it. They could not accept Hebrew cosmology, even though it was right there in the Bibles. They can't do it. They can't accept the fact that everything they've been pursuing was wrong. And so eventually you see the people taking over, starting up these flat earth ministries, are the people in the back of the bus. All right. They're the kind of the lowly in this context. And they're given wisdom, at least for this, kind of idea within the Bible. I love this too in Proverbs 3, where he says, he giveth grace unto the lowly. Guys, this grace, this is what I'm talking to you about, that everything is opposites here. So you have like the lowly here are just like the poor, like that they don't have nice clothes. They're not someone you would look twice at necessarily. But it's opposite, because you think of the rich people with the fine clothes, and they're the ones with grace, right? They're the ones you look twice at. They're the ones people worship in society. But we're talking about a different type of grace here. We're talking about the grace to be able to exemplify his will. Proverbs 15. The fear of Yahweh is the instruction of wisdom, and before honor is humility. So if you want to be honored, you want to have that awakening kiss, as we saw earlier, where you are brought into the presence of the Creator, and he hands you that crown and that robe, and he takes you up to, you got to humble yourself, and then you will be honored. And if we are seeking honor in this life, then maybe you're going to receive your due here, right? I've noticed that trend. I've noticed the trend that those who seek out his commands, they're just despised by Christianity, by if anyone here, you guys should see that if you are truly seeking out his commands, you're truly trying to live by that, you're going to have the 99% of Christianity, they're going to despise you. They're going to dishonor you. They don't get it. They don't get it at all. There's a humility in being obedient to his commands. Like people who cannot keep his commands, they can't even keep the Sabbath day, which is the mark of God. It's one of the 10 commandments. They're not humbling themselves to keep it. They still have humility issues they need to work on. Humble yourself and bring yourself low, and he will lift you up. Proverbs 18, before destruction of the heart of man is haughty, and before honor is humility. I'm detecting a theme here. Hopefully you guys are too. He that answereth the matter before he heareth it, it is folly and shame unto him. That's kind of interesting, because I hear this a lot, right? This is repeated all the time on the internet. Whenever someone introduces a new idea, they love this verse. He that answereth the matter before he heareth it is folly and shame in him. Because you'll say something and they just reject it, right? No. But the one above it is that's the reason I put it there side by side, because there's something about maybe rejecting ideas that you're seeking this place of honor, right? You're like, no, I don't want to be brought to that low position of having to recognize that I was wrong about everything. I have to readjust my position. I have to go apologize to people or say, yeah, all those times I was being haughty back there. I was speaking out of my butt. I didn't really know what I was talking about. I'm humbling myself. And then, of course, you will be brought to a place of honor. Most people don't want to do that. Proverbs 22 says, a good name is rather to be chosen than great riches, and loving favor rather than silver and gold. The rich and poor meet together. Yahweh is the maker of them all. A prudent man foreseeth the evil and hideth himself, but the simple pass on and are punished. By humility and fear of Yahweh are riches and honor and life. And this is, of course, talking about eternity as well. Philippians 2, let's read a little bit of, I think I'm going to end on this. We're going to end on Paul tonight. If there be, therefore, any consolation in Mashiach, if any comfort of love, if any fellowship of the Spirit, if any bowls and mercies, fulfill ye my joy, that ye be like-minded, having the same love, being of one accord, of one mind. Let nothing be done through strife or vainglory, right? So nothing as above, so below. No order out of chaos, like I'm just going to fight with this person so we can bring about order. It's funny too, because we accuse like the Freemasons and the Illuminati and stuff of doing this, which they do because they're working in accordance with their master. We turn around and do the same thing. And it's like, well, I see all these people. I'm like, I'm glad you're not in power, because, oh man, you would be just as bad, if not worse. Let nothing be done through strife or vainglory. So If you feel something needs to be accomplished and it's not being done, and if you feel the need to do it through accusing them, attacking them, through strife, it's the wrong approach, and it's probably fear-based. It's not love-based. But in lowliness of mind, let each esteem others better than themselves. Ouch. I mean, think about that, like on the internet. Next time you're on the internet and you're in a chat room, the person you're speaking with, let's say you're in a ministry, let's say you're in a community, just pick it in your head, right? The other person you're talking to is better than you. Treat them better than yourselves. Treat them as greater than yourself. Like, how often does that enter our minds? So good. Look not every man on his own things, but every man also on the things of others. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Mashiach, Yahusha, who being in the form of Allahayam, thought it not robbery to be equal with Allahayam, but made himself of no reputation. We saw this in Ascension of Isaiah, and took upon him the form of a servant, and was made in the likeness of men. And this is what tripped up Satan, because he couldn't see that. He just could not possibly comprehend how that could be the case. You know, we a lot of people, they protest this idea that Satan didn't know. Like, it's almost like they think like he's just this cool, like, I don't know, like, it just has it all together and stuff. It's like, no, the guy had issues. Like, he made no scripture better than man, but he's still, in his pride, he's blinded to it. And this is the scary thing about pride, guys. Like, I have seen this with people. I have seen people, they didn't humble themselves. They were in a position of authority. They did not humble themselves, and they became blinded to the truth. Total darkness. Y'all just put them in darkness, to the point where they're like, that person would say, I used to believe in the Bible, and I can't even believe I ever thought that was legitimate. I can't believe I ever saw that as true. Their heart was already in the wrong place. They were given over to the desires of their heart. But I digress. Mashiach was made in the likeness of men, and being found in fashion as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient unto death, even the death of the cross, which is what, of course, Ascension of Isaiah says. Wherefore Allahayam also hath highly exalted him and given him a name which is above every name, that at the name of Yahusha every knee should bow, of things in heaven and things in earth and things under the earth, and that every tongue should confess that Yahusha HaMashiach is Adonai, into the glory of Allahayam, Father. By the way, he's quoting here from Isaiah. And in Isaiah, it says Yahweh or Yahweh, or Yahuwah. And take your pick on the phonetic pronunciation there. And it's interesting because I think that is, I think Paul is insinuating here, as I believe that Yeshua or Yahusha is Yahuwah, meaning that Yahuwah is the Son. And that was the great mystery. Like the Hebrews, they knew that they were worshiping Yahuwah. They knew who their God was. But then they would say, well, there's going to be this Messiah, and he's a mystery. His person, who he is, we don't know yet. We don't know his name, but he's going to arrive. And that was the mystery that was withheld from them, and it's what was withheld from Satan and everybody. Nobody even in the heavens knew that it was going to be Yahuwah. That when Isaiah said that it's Yahuwah, the name that every knee will bow, because his name wasn't revealed yet as Yeshua, the salvation. And that's the name that every knee shall bow. So I think that's it. That's all I'm going to talk about this week. Hope you guys all enjoyed that. Unfortunately, with the Ascension of Isaiah, I wish I would have gotten it all out. I'm sorry if it got a little choppy in there. I prepare these things. I try to prepare for a 2-hour block in my head. I'm like, I think I could fit this much material in. And I was seeing the time. I'm like, I can't do it. So I skipped the whole chapter. But read it on your own. It's a good book. Let me just talk about this really quickly. The future of the unexpected cosmology. Where do I see us going in the future? The paleo. And I want to be putting all of really the brunt of my focus on the Paleo Hebrew, and specifically what Pamela Glasgow is doing with this ministry. And she is, I am so glad that she is in this ministry, that we can partner with her. And I want to give her as many as much support, financial support, whatever she needs, spiritual support to get this done and get the whole Bible translated if Yah gives her those years to do it. So we have completed the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible. That's Genesis through Deuteronomy. She has completed 3 out of 5 books of the Psalms. She has completed Song of Songs. She's currently working on Matthew. I think she's working on Joshua. I think she's working on Revelation. She's working on a few things. For those of you who are Patreon subscribers, we're giving you updates all the time on how Matthew is progressing, and giving you some previews, that kind of stuff. And I want to thank everybody who is supporting this ministry. It is so, I want to, Yah willing, this will continue for many, many years. And again, this is what Yah has put in my lap. This mission to get the Paleo Hebrew out. I didn't see it at first. It kind of came slow. But it's so evident in my mind, this is what we need to be focusing on, getting the Bible out from the Paleo Hebrew. So you're looking right here is the Torah Portion Study Guide, which is this presentation tonight was brought to you by the Torah Portion Study Guide. And what is the Torah Portion Study Guide? Well, it is the KJV, the Paleo Hebrew, the Aramaic Targum, and the Septuagint lined up verse for verse, line for line. You can compare them. This is for your personal study needs. It's for group studies. It's for church, for homeschool, what have you. And when I talk about the KJV, that comes from the Masoretic tradition, the Hebrew Masoretic. So you have of course, the KJV is a Targum. It's an English Targum from the Hebrew Masoretic, but then we have the Paleo Hebrew you can line up right next to it. And then we can see the Aramaic Targum right up next to the Septuagint. So this is something that we give out as part of this ministry. I'm so glad to have these Torah Portion Study Guides done. And, you might be asking the question, well, how do I get one? Or how do I get the whole set, all 5 of them? Well, it's actually really simple. All you do is you support this ministry. And what we do is for every single dollar you give to this ministry, every single month, whether it's $5, $15, $30, $50, $75, $100, $150, whatever, we give that exact same amount back to you every single month. So if you give $75, we give you a $75 gift certificate or coupon for our store. And of course, we're book publishers here. We put out a lot of books, a lot of different topics, just some of it ancient wisdom and ancient literature, cosmological stuff, some of it fictional too, as well. But you can choose these books. You can get all 5 in a month, or you can get 1 in a month and, circulate. It's getting late, guys. I'm sorry. I'm getting choppy here with my words. When I start getting funny mouth like this, it's time to quit. But anyways, I appreciate everyone's support. And, I asked everyone pray to Yah to see if he would have you continue to support this ministry and help us translate the entire Bible from the Paleo, and, help support Pamela, help support Rebecca. And it goes on from there, of course, and I received my family's full support through this ministry as well. So love you guys. We will do this again. Good night, everybody. Have a restful Sabbath.